Hello, this is Scott Eustace. Reporting back on the IDA lookout, um, IDA damage lookout project, some of the lessons we learned even while we were committing to the project, um, things we could do for the 2022 hurricane season, and what not to do, right? Um, I've got some slides. I'll share the link presently. Well, go back. When we think about Ida, it hit Barataria Bay. It was a very large storm. We had a lot of points of interest, very limited photography from the National Geodetic Survey. So we're not sure if that's the future, but if it is, we want to try to limit our points of interest compared to the size of the storm. Here's the first one. So what was Ida? Big hit in Fouchon, big hit South Lafourche. There was no levee in Ironton, so the Alliance Refinery was wiped out. We had hundreds of oil spills, including 20 to 30 that we at Healthy Gulf were responsible in reporting and initiating cleanup on. The wetland losses are tremendous, that's yet to be reported, but, and then the question we'll never know is like, did these wetlands in South Lafourche that were sacrificed, did it save the Estelle neighborhood in Jefferson Parish? I suspect we cannot prove it. So as with any hurricane, we had NGS fly for our imagery source. Thanks to Sophie for making the Cartoscope to work with the NGS imagery, because I think this is applicable nationwide. And but just sad there wasn't more here, although it did hit the major waterways and major coastlines, and frankly saw a lot. And for the first time, NGS seems to have had a oil spill mission. They are the geodetic survey, so they're not guaranteed to care about the pollution mission, but you can see that little extension to the photograph at the bottom middle. And they saw the oil spills off Fouchon and flew them and documented them. So we're grateful. We released Ida Damage Lookout initially with all of these points of interest, over 3,700, and we got 97 participants and 1,400 plus, almost 1,500 classifications, which is not good enough for 3,700 points of interest. So we really want to be able to limit the scope of the project. Thankfully, the Cartoscope team realized this very quickly, and we quickly shifted to some better solutions, particularly for the flag project, which ended up giving us good results for that project, but not quickly enough for the oil sheen project. Nevertheless, at this stage in the game, with 3,000 points of interest, we lucked out. Someone did point out the Robertson Energy spill to my attention. And it turns out Julie Jermansky also photographed it. And through my detective work and some consultation with the team at Healthy Gulf, we got a cleanup initiated long before the company reported the spill. Naomi and I decided not to report it to NRC. That was like my initial position. I think I regret that. I think we know from the chaos now, all of Naomi's work, that if we were to submit 20 reports from a project like this in the future, if we did it correctly, I think it would be a help and it wouldn't add to the mess. So yeah, this was the image picked up by the Geodetic Survey of an unplugged, not orphan well, but shut-in well, a well with no company staff to look after it. Although this has not been producing since 1997, it was certainly polluting whole month after Ida. And our work with Ida Damage Lookout was part of the chain that allowed us to report it in mid-September, long before the company did. So midstream, Sophie implemented NGS Quick Maps, which, if we had done that at the beginning during our 97 lookout and 1,400 classifications, limiting the 3,700 to 553 locations would have given us, 3 observations per location, roughly, right? Later on, we throttled the flaring project to 89, and we were still able to get a lot out of the flaring project. It's just that the flaring project might not be worth doing in the future, just because we only found one place. We have 100% confidence and very high confidence for most of the imagery reviews, but we only found one flaring incident, and that was at Alliance, which we were already aware of. So I don't think the value add for flaring is as great as it is for oil sheens. Yeah, here's after, the project's gone through the quick map, but, in 440 lookouts, we still don't have a lot of individual locations that have been reviewed by very many applicants. But these are all of the places identified with oil sheets. So you can download that. And you can see it's a pretty terrible drop off. And our confidence in red doesn't apply to most of the locations. So on the x-axis, you have how many times locations were reviewed. We have one freakish location that was reviewed 72 times. So that's a bug. I don't know what happened there. But you see far and away the plurality, vast majority, super majority of sites are only reviewed once. And that's a shame, because it really doesn't allow us to bring the power of crowdsourcing to bear. As we get 2 reviews, we have more with confidence. A lot of those, if they were the same, they get 100%, and if they were different, they're 0. So it goes up, and then it goes back down once you get the third evaluation. No image was a big part of these responses. So, yeah, in the future, using the NGS Quick Map, if we limit the places that have an image, we won't even have that third category. And I think we'll get a lot more responses per lookout, and we'll get more observations, more useful observations if we cut the fat that way. Look at what we did with flaring. Now, there are many fewer places we wanted people to look at with flaring. And for whatever reason, there are very few or almost no locations that were observed less than 5 times. And for every location, people were very confident. The crowd submitted similar responses to almost every location, above 2 out of 3. So the exception is that one place where you see the blue line below the red, we fell below 66% confidence for one location of interest. So in that case, I don't know, there might have been some no image information in there, but that's the only one. People weren't, I think it was 55% certain that it was flaring. Yeah, there's 55% certain that it was flaring. but that's not enough to meet our 66% threshold that I arbitrarily put in there. So this is what you want to see. You want to see this curve. A few places are reviewed many, many times. On average, each is viewed a lot of times. At the lowest, things are reviewed 5 times. That's pretty good. It gives you some confidence that the evaluation means something. You have so much certainty in the responses from the crowd. It's phenomenal. We only had 1 out of 89 where the crowd was unsure. And this is pretty easy. People know what fire looks like, right? So it's something they already have some experience with. Very high confidence that Alliance was flaring. So unfortunately, the utility of running this is very limited. We already knew that Alliance was flaring. It was a location that was reported by the news, and we already had our attention focused on it. So the usefulness of IDA Lookout in finding novel problems is limited in the flaring case. You know, it's kind of the same thing that limited the potential areas of interest, also limits the utility of the program, right? You have to strike the balance. But just to show you, you know, this was the one positive above 66% certainty. So it was 55% certain. Oh, sorry. This one was 55% certain that it was flaring. And it's interesting because it's got an orange piece of plastic in the middle of the image. So, you know, not a fire, but very visually similar to the previous one that was, right? And you look here, this is a fire. This is not. This is a piece of plastic. But the colors look so similar. So I think this would fool an AI, you know. The crowd is right to be uncertain, if that makes any sense. So when we look at trying to get blood from the stone of the oil sheen data, you know, would it still have been useful had we looked at it more intensely? You know, the first review, for everything that was reviewed 3 times, it still gave us a positive result. It was 101 sheen. It's much better than 500, right? For me to review. But still not great. Maybe there are 100 sheen, but dang, it's too high, you know. When we add the percent confidence into that, you know, 3 evaluations or more limitation, we drill down into 63 locations. And again, if we had had what we had for the flaring project, we would have had 5 evaluations per location, which would have been even better, and I think would have lowered this number even more. But, you know, if we spend a week and we get 63 locations, that is something that I can do with 3 or 4 hours of time if I have the internet and a laptop. And I found 19 positives that were correctly identified. And since we have the responsible party information cooked into the data, it's easy to then file those reports. Now, 19 positives, you know, we have a lot of redundant locations, as you might guess. So a single spill might result in multiple positives. So those 19 positives, that's not 19 NRC reports, but, you know, it's a significant amount of NRC reports and about what we normally do. So this makes sense. What also is frustrating is that sun glint is really confusing people. The imagery flown for the NGS is flown in the middle of the day. It's flown catch as catch can. So, you know, there's a reason that oil spill observation protocol forces you to compensate for sun glint by circling the oil oil spill if you're in an airplane. And, for the things, for the sheens identified, for the images with sun glint, there are a lot of false positives. Sometimes the plane's flying in the dark, and that also obscures things. It also makes some places that I reviewed and did find oil sheen more uncertain. So if you look at the one row, those are things that were identified by the crowd as having an oil sheen. But I identified it as not having oil sheen. So 12 times there were, of the photos with sun glint, there were 12 mistakes like that. False positives. There are also sometimes not identified as oil sheen that I did identify the oil sheen either in the darkness or sun glint. So this is why the government is moving away from photo methods and using radar instead of pictures. It's just better. So perhaps we can change the training module to try to compensate. But here's a positive. This resulted in 2 positives. This is an oil spill in Port Fourchon, kind of typical. Here's an oil spill in the sun glint. Really hard to tell. Is this just the sun? Is this an oil spill? You actually need to zoom out and move the location to figure out that this was a pretty serious oil spill. And here's the Empire Hoagie Factory. And this is ambiguous. When I did my review, I raised this as a positive just because it's so typical. But if, this is not an image. If I had taken this from a Southwind flight, I would not create a report based on this kind of photo alone. I would circle the location until I got a rainbow sheen in the photograph. Unfortunately, with using the imagery, we only have one shot. So I would consider this a positive, given there's no way for the pilot to circle around this location. I would file this, but the sun glint makes it uncertain whether or not this was a substantial rainbow sheen or whether it was just biogenic. All right. Well, in summary, so Healthy Golf did use Ida Damage Lookout to force the Robertson Energy cleanup, along with a bunch of other things. But it was one, tool in our toolkit to tell us we weren't crazy, to help us locate. Help us locate that still that Julie took a picture of, and she didn't know where she had taken the picture. So really thankful to Sophie for implementing NGS QuipMap. But it was a little bit too late for oil sheens, and there was a bug with it where we would get one image that was reviewed 72 times. So a lot of our quick responses were diffused and wasted on confirming that there are a lot of areas without imagery, and that won't happen again. So it's good. The flaring project shows us that this project can be very effective if we have a limited number of points of interest and sufficient review and a good tutorial. We had many evaluations with 100% certainty, which is just awesome. But we don't really need to use projects for flaring, I don't think. Although we could, but I think we should, instead of diluting our volunteer base, focus on oil sheens, because that's where we have the most value add. we don't even know, flaring isn't necessarily a violation, whereas an oil spill is always a violation and always needs people to go clean it up. So what do we change? We've already implemented NGS Quick Maps, so there's a lot that's going to get better in 2022. Let's try to limit points of interest to less than 1,000 for oil sheets. And I think, if we had only 1,000 and get 1,500 responses, we would have had a lot more certainty on where the oil spills were. That would have improved things. But I think we should directly recruit some undergraduates, like from Dr. Sean Anderson's classes, maybe Chris Oliver's classes. If we could get 6 folks at 100 images apiece, that's 6 reviews of each of 1,000 points of interest. That's going to really, just really give us the answers we want and the certainty that we want. We should get more imagery, which potentially will expand our problem and expand our number of sources. But we should use all the imagery we can because we can, and then we should coordinate with Gina at LOSCO to best communicate to her and thus the entire different incident commands how best to incorporate this information into response so that we have as many boats on the water, shutting off pipelines, capping wells as fast as possible. So thank you so much. That was a long video.